First of all, we're getting on some moisturizer because I have been seriously slacking in the skincare department and I'm looking to develop some more consistency. It's not really consistency, it's like balance that I'm going for, because I tend to get like really fixated on one thing, and right now it's my creative work, especially writing. All I want to do is freaking write. That's all I want to do. But the thing is, while I don't completely sidetrack everything else, I get a lot less consistent with like things that if I was just being a little bit more balanced, if I was able to cultivate that, then it wouldn't be so all or nothing. At least when it comes to not necessarily absolutely necessary things. Obviously, basic hygiene, yeah, it's fine, but some of the skincare stuff, I'll tend to be like, oh, that's just extraneous. We've had the shower, we've had everything else, but then I start noticing, and it's not so much with my face, it's my body, that if I'm not moisturizing regularly, then it does affect the quality of my skin. And while I'm fairly fortunate that it's not my face, it's still sort of like, once I start getting a little bit more consistent with moisturizing elsewhere, it's sort of like, well, I really shouldn't be neglecting moisturizing for the face and eye area as well, because that's the most important thing to me, I guess, beauty-wise, because I'm not like a big beauty person, but it's sort of like, if I'm taking care of myself the best that I'm able with like the basics and nutrition and all of that, then I don't really find it especially necessary to be putting on like a lot of stuff like makeup or whatever. If like I have my little, like when I'm doing way more cardio and regular exercise, that tends to give, like, I think it tends to make me look a bit more glowing, even though, you know, I could highlight that with some blush or whatever, but it tends to be more than I want to do day to day, because especially when I get thrown off with my skincare, if you're putting on makeup, even if it's a minimal amount of makeup, then you can't like just not be with like the washing your face and doing all those extra steps, because then you will end up having way more problems with your skin. So now that we've done that, the reason why I'm doing that today is because I do want to go out today. We will write together, we will read together. I am going to Barnes & Noble's to pick up some new books because I have been struggling through Babel, and it's not that I absolutely don't like Babel, but it's just like, I feel like I need just a break from it. There is a book coming out today that I would like to pick up, because here's the thing. This particular author, I don't hate them, and I actually really like want to like them, and so typically when that happens, if I've read a couple of books by an author and they just haven't been for me, I'll typically give it like a year or so, and then if they are producing a project that strikes my interest in some way, I'm willing to give it a try again. And one of those authors is producing a new book, and it's not anything attached from something that they did in the past, so it's sort of like, I would really like for this author to hit for me because they have the potential to do so. And so I just want to see. I want to see if anything has changed, because I love to see authors develop. And while I'm at the bookstore, I will be getting probably some other things too, because that's kind of a gamble. It's a gamble financially and with my time. So while I'm there, I'm going to pick up some stuff that I'm fairly sure I'm guaranteed to like, or at least something smaller, because like I was looking, there's like the shortest book that I could break this up with is actually more of an extreme horror, and that is just not what I'm in the mood for right now. Like, I want something that tends to be more spooky or uncanny horror, that's maybe, you know, it's not a door stopper book, because like most of what I have right now is a door stopper, or it's something that I've read before, because I have like Ring on the shelf right now, but I've actually already read Ring, so I could kind of go in and have a repeat experience that I know I'm probably going to enjoy again. I'm interested to see how I would respond to a book that I really liked when I was younger, if that has changed now. because the American Ring movie is one of my that's like an all-time favorite horror movie for me, and I really also loved the novel as well. I know I'm gonna pick up at least this one new release that I'm curious about. I want to try and pick up something that's more in my wheelhouse, that is shorter, that I can get my mojo back for reading, because I've been in a bit of a reading slump. I would also like to actually annotate something and maybe give a little bit more in-depth of a book review, because I was looking at some of my old reviews and I was like, I was way spicier right here, and I feel like I was giving more coherent thoughts on these books. I would like to do something like that again, but I need to start doing that with shorter works. And Babel wasn't the one to do it with, and Babel isn't going to be the one that would make a really good talking about it video, because I do have things to say about Babel, because there are things I really enjoy about it, and then there are things that I'm like, what the hell is this? And that's more to do with the content of the book and what it's trying to say or what it wants to say than it is about the writing. I absolutely have zero complaints at this point about the writing and about the atmosphere. I think that's all 100%, and I will probably pick up Yellowface by R.F. Kong, and that's more contemporary, so it might hit more for me. But as far as what is going on in Babel, with the characters and the environment and sort of the larger issues that the book is talking about, I'm kind of what are we doing here? What are we doing? And so that makes me want to put the book down, because it's too in the middle, and I will get into it when I actually talk about Babel later, but I'm a little bit over her right now. I kind of want to get through it, but at the same time, I would like to read something or be reading something that I have a bit more stronger feelings about, and I would like to read something that I very much enjoy, because I haven't for a while. It's all been kind of snoozers, or just things that super aren't hitting on the horror level, or that I was reading for research. So we're looking for a horror that hits, and also seeing if this author, who I really want to work out for me, I want her to work out for me so bad, if she has actually written something that I'm gonna enjoy this time.
우리 다시 돌아갈까 너무 많이 돌아왔나
I showed you one of the things that I got, which was the main thing, which is The Familiar by Lee Bardugo. And I do not have a very good track record with Lee Bardugo's novels, but it's not so bad that I am completely turned off from trying new novels from her. You hear that? Sorry y'all, that's Phoebe Sweet is right there, and Nasa is determined to fight with her. The first novel of hers that I read was the first Shadow and Bone book, just due to the amount of fandom screeching that was going on about it. And when I read it, it was the most milquetoast, soggy, dry, white bread, plain milk, mayonnaise, just a bunch of nothing. It was so middle of the road, so unimaginative. I could not believe how many people were screaming about it like it was the best thing ever. I really couldn't, and I was just I'm not reading any of more of the Shadow and Bone trilogy. I'm not reading Six of Crows, and people were on me for the longest time to read Six of Crows. I ended up watching some reviews from people who my taste tends to align with theirs a bit, and they finally read the Six of Crows book, because I was like, well, maybe, since that's the one everybody says is her best work. And then they talked about it, and I was like, absolutely not. I'm not setting myself up for it. Six of Crows sounds really popular for people who get really into like certain characters in relationships and like hardcore into ships. And I am not, I don't sail. I typically don't sail. I am beyond that point in my life. I am more looking for like a mood and a plot. And yes, I like character relationships, but I don't glom onto ships. That's not me. That's a very fandom thing, which is perfectly fine for fandom. There are some books that are just fandom books for that reason, and it's never going to be my book. I did try the ninth house when she made her transition to adult, and again, it was aggressively boring. It was like, I couldn't believe it. Like, she was like secret societies at, I believe it's Yale, at an Ivy League school. I don't know how she managed to make it boring, but she did. The magic system was workaday, lackluster. There was no sense of like danger or mystery about these secret societies, because it's just like, oh yeah, everything's just, it's just, here are all the secret societies and we know absolutely everything about them. And it just becomes like, for a story like that she, like, they were calling it dark academia, it really wasn't. It was just standard urban fantasy. Whenever you have something just out in the open like that, and there's absolutely no sense of intrigue with your cults or secret societies, it just comes right back down to the urban fantasy level, which there's nothing wrong with urban fantasy, and I sometimes get in the mood for urban fantasy, but it's not the same thing as dark academia. And it, like, when somebody's advertising something as dark academia with like secret societies, that's a very specific vibe for me that tends way more towards something like The Ninth Gate as a movie, even though that is not taking place at the university level, it's within like rare books. But it's that sort of vibe where there's something like weird going on and you don't quite, like, you have hints about what it is, and you have a character that's kind of coming in and discovering things, and there is kind of a more blatant reveal at the end, but like, the characters aren't just coming out and going, and this is our secret society, and this is how our magic works, and this is how this, and that is how that. It's just like, ew. Also, what I did not like about Ninth House was that I really wasn't about the whole like Darlington thing at all. And I did not like that it ended on a cliffhanger. I didn't like any of the subplot with the ghosts. It was too obvious to be really interesting. It was just like, yep, she sees ghosts, and here are the ghosts, and they're not really scary at all. They're just like people. They're just people. And they might do violent things to you, but there was no like uncanny, spooky presence about them or about the atmosphere. There wasn't even a very good academic atmosphere, to be real with you, about that book. And then for the things that they were talking up as like, oh, this is like hard hitting, and like there's just some really like violent, like depraved stuff that goes down. It really wasn't. It really wasn't. And like, for the one scene that was like an essay scene with Alex, it was very like frontal. It did use like upfront language. It all happened on the page. It was very brief, and I think it was, when I say handled well, it was just very straightforward language about what happened to her as a child. And then we were sort of moving on with it. The scene wasn't there for like titillation or to like be melodramatic or whatever, but the way that S.A. was handled in that novel, I think was really poor, because there's another essay that happens to a friend of hers at Yale. I hope it's Yale, it might not be. It happens off the page, but we hear about it later, and there is videotape of this that happened. It happened at a party. And so the most grotesque thing that happens to a character that like they were describing as depraved is that the person who is the predator, the person who inflicted SA and like filmed it on this other character, they are the ones that are having like this more disgusting thing happen to them that is also non-consensual. So they're being made to perform these behaviors and actions against their will due to it's like a magical drug. And so Alex kind of does this to this guy as revenge for this horrible essay that he perpetrates against her friend. But here's the thing, while in real life, if that went down, people would be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened, and that's all really horrible, and that's all really terrible. In the context of a work of fiction, you are happy that this depraved thing has happened to this other character. You want it, well, I'm not saying you want that particular thing to happen to them, but there's no real moral struggle going on. There's no horror involved because it's sort of like vicarious vigilante justice for like the metaphoric all essays that will never have that sort of justice and never have that sort of revenge. And so it's not creating any sense of true horror in me because we're not watching a character who we care about being forced to go through something that is meant to dehumanize them. And it's a very depraved thing, but it's like it's so horrible you can't look away. So there's no sense of like me questioning my own ethics or moral compass in reading a scene like that, because I'm frankly happy that this character is getting punished. In order for something to truly be depraved, it's gotta be happening to somebody who you don't want it to happen to. Or it has to be like really, really depraved, and then we're just getting into territory that I'm not all that interested in exploring in horror. Come on, you know you already don't like Phoebe, leave her alone. Das. All of that to say, I was very, very disappointed in Ninth House as a whole, but the thing is, in that book especially was a quality to Lee Bardugo's writing, her authorial voice, was something that I very much enjoyed, and it was one of the last books that I remember kind of like, oh, I want to go back home and read this, and I was sitting there like trying to figure it out because I wanted to return to the book, but I wasn't particularly enthused about anything that was going on. So for me, what I was most enjoying about Ninth House was some of the academic stuff, yes, some of the secret society stuff, but it was mostly Lee Bardugo's authorial voice. And so I did not, when I guess she came out with Hellbent, I did not pick that up because I knew, like, I'm not going back for more of the same. And so I happened to see when I was on Amazon looking at other more horror books and dark fantasy books that they had like a little, of course, like advertisement that she was coming out with The Familiar. And since this is completely different from anything that she did before, and because I want one of her novels to hit for me, I was willing to pick this up because it's something new, it's something different, and so I'm willing to see if like maybe she's come to a point where it will hit with me, or if we just need to say, you know, no to Lee Bardugo for a few more years, and then maybe we'll try again depending on how this book works. I'm also super pleased about this because she's not a doorstopper, and so I'm moving her up to like the front of my TBR. Let's go ahead and read our blurb. Fate can be changed, curses can be broken. In a shabby house on a shabby street in the new capital of Madrid, Lucia Cotado uses scraps of magic to get through her days of endless toil as a scullion. But when her scheming mistress discovers that the lump of a servant cowering in the kitchen is actually hiding a talent for little miracles, she demands Lucia use those gifts to better the family's social position. What begins as simple amusement for the nobility takes a perilous turn when Lucia garners the notice of Antonio Perez, the disgraced secretary to Spain's king. Still reeling from the defeat of his armada, the king is desperate for any advantage in the war against England's heretic queen, and Perez will stop at nothing to regain the king's favor. Determined to seize this one chance to better her fortunes, Lucia plunges into a world of seers and alchemists, holy men and hucksters, where the lines between magic, science, and fraud are never certain. But as her notoriety grows, so does the danger that her Jewish blood will doom her to the Inquisition's wrath. She will have to use every bit of her wit and will to survive, even if that means enlisting the help of Gien Santanjo, an embittered, immortal familiar whose own secrets could prove deadly for them both. This is dealing with topics that I am very much interested in. I would like to try like a more historical setting for alchemy and magic. It sounds like hopefully this has a lot of intrigue, though I don't, knowing Lee Bardugo, my vibe expectations are calibrated for her. This is likely going to be, if I'm guessing, right, just guessing, this is going to be less atmospheric. It's not going to be very spooky. The magic system is going to be very upfront, and what we're predominantly going to be dealing with is social and political intrigue. That's where the tension is going to come from, plus Luja's heritage being a danger for her at the time. I'm excited to read it. I do think, like, I haven't been liking how publishers, especially in YA, have been doing all these sprayed edges and making books like unnecessarily designed. It's like over designed, and it's because of BookTok, BookTube, and Bookstagram, you know, showing off the books. And I think there's nothing wrong with that, with a lovely cover and maybe some deckled edges or whatever. I think that the extent that they've gone to with the familiar is very tasteful. I have been turned off from a lot of the young adult hardbacks that I've been seeing, the new adult hardbacks I've been seeing, because what it's looking like is that they are way more concerned with how the books are looking on camera and less about the quality of the story. And so if you want to give me a very, very beautiful book, because like, look at this, is very lovely. Look at the interior. It's very, very pretty. I almost don't want to annotate this, but I am. But I am going to annotate it. I think with the little extras that they've added in here, with the interior design and just the black sprayed edges, I'm okay with it. It's just that, like, I was noticing, especially with Fourth Wing and Iron Flame, like the design, like with all the dragons and the sprayed edges on the pages and all that stuff, I'm just really, I don't care as much what the book looks like. I care ultimately about the quality of the writing and the quality of the story. And there was a lot being said negatively about the speed with which Iron Flame came out and the quality. It just deteriorated, and it's sort of like, please, publishing, you know, don't fall into the trap of just making things look pretty for Bookstagram, BookTok, and BookTube, and then you've got us reading all of these garbage stories. The Familiar is the book that I was most looking to purchase today. I did pick up a few others that we'll go over. I was very disappointed because actually the two books, I wanted to get 3, and if anything else popped up on me, I would be willing to purchase it. But the 3 books that I wanted to get was The Familiar, I wanted to pick up Luda by Grant Morrison, and I wanted to pick up, let me see if I can remember this title, I Feed Her to the Beast and the Beast is Me. I believe that is the title of the book. It's YA, it's horror, it's about a young girl who's in a, I think it's a ballet boarding school, and she's looking to make a pact with a blood demon. Like, it's very much my speed. It's very, very much my speed, but it was not there. I'm gonna end up having to order it. Luda was not there either, so that will have to be also an Amazon order for when I get through some more of my TBR. But the other 3 books are all books that I did have on my Amazon wish list, so I can just cross those off. So I have 2 from Adam Neville. The first is The Ritual, and this is the like latest, well, I don't know about latest, but the one that sticks out in my mind is like, it's a horror novel, it's set in the woods, there's a deer, the deer is fucked up, like, because I've seen the stills of the creature from, I believe it's, was it a feature film or was it a Netflix adaptation? Now a major motion picture. So I believe Adam Neville also has a Netflix adaptation. And so The Ritual is like, I believe, what he is most known for. And so let's go ahead and read the back of the book. When four old university friends set off into the Scandinavian wilderness of the Arctic Circle, they aimed to briefly escape the problems of their lives and reconnect with one another. But when Luke, the only man still single and living a precarious existence, finds he has little left in common with his well-heeled friends, tensions rise. With limited experience between them, a shortcut meant to ease their hike turns into a nightmare scenario that could cost them their lives. Lost, hungry, and surrounded by a forest untouched for millennia, Luke figures things couldn't possibly get any worse. But then they stumble across a derelict building. Ancient artifacts decorate the walls, and there are bones scattered upon the dry floors, the residue of old rites and pagan sacrifice for something that still exists in the forest, something responsible for the bestial presence that follows their every step. As the four friends stagger in the direction of salvation, they learn that death doesn't come easy among these ancient trees. If I didn't kind of know what this was about already, if I hadn't seen those images from the movie, based on that blurb, I don't know that I would have picked this book up without hearing some word of mouth about it, because that blurb, frankly, does not intrigue me. But Adam Neville's reputation is kind of like pretty widespread within the horror community. I haven't tried him yet, but there have been a number of titles that I have seen, and I also follow him on Instagram. There are a number of titles that I have seen by him that I kind of know a little bit about what each of them is about. That makes me very interested in what he's producing, and I'm hoping that at least one of these two novels that I have purchased by him are hits for me. I wanted to do the most well-known first, but I'm probably not going to read this one first. And she's not too bad, right? And the print is kind of, it's bigger. So she's not bad, but the thing is, the one that I want to read first is kind of a doorstopper, so I'm not sure. And our last two have like a little bit of a theme in common. So the second book that I picked up from Adam Neville is Last Days. And I think I want to read this one first because I'll have a weird thing where for authors who have a very successful book, I tend to not like that book, not because I'm trying to be contrarian, but typically I will really end up liking that author. Like Gillian Flynn, I think, I'm not going to remember the novel that I really enjoyed by her. My favorite one is about a woman who, she was the victim, like her family was a victim of a serial killer, but like she's this total piece of shit that like her entire existence is milking the deaths of her own family on like the true crime circuit. I'm pretty sure she's pretty badly alcoholic. But anyway, I very much enjoyed that book. I thought the ending was kind of a little flat, but as far as a character and a full novel goes, I liked that one the best. Sharp Objects, I didn't much care for, and I read those first. And then I finally read Gone Girl, and I hated it. I threw that book away. And that typically doesn't happen. I was getting through it. I understood. I was like, oh, I do understand why like more people like this, and it has to do with the voice and the way she's writing it. But like there's this punchy style that a lot of like publishing has been wanting, that to me it feels like too much. It's too much, especially for the length of the book. If you have a novella or a shorter novel, I think that very punchy, like voicey style works a lot better. But then there's like, you pass this point of no return for me where like the very voice that like kind of turned me on in the beginning, if it doesn't calm down a little bit throughout the book, it starts grating on me. And the fact that like I really hated both of the people in Gone Girl. I hated the husband, I hated the wife. And typically I'm a really big fan of like everybody in this novel is a piece of shit. And there are other books that have kind of done the toxic relationship or the toxic marriage very well for me, where both people are horrible and it hasn't completely turned me off of reading the book. Gone Girl did. Like, I got to a certain point and I was almost finished with it too, but I was sitting here, I was like, this book is like gonna give me a panic attack, and I hate these people. I want them both to die. I don't want either of them to survive. I want somebody to come in and just murder them both so they can get out of my life. And so I didn't even finish the book. I threw it in the garbage. I didn't even donate it. I threw it in the trash. And I've only done that, I think, with like one other book. Typically, like, there's something about authors like bigger hits that I'll understand why they're the bigger hit, but I tend to like their quieter stuff. I tend to like this stuff that, like, it's still very good, but like not everybody raves about. Case in point, Stephen King, who is quoted, Stephen King's on everybody's freaking horror novel. It means nothing. A lot of people, like, their favorite Stephen King book is gonna be It, or The Stand, or Pet Sematary. Pet Sematary, one of my least favorites, not because of the quality of the writing, but just because it's just a great big book about depression and depressing things happening. And it's like there are some moments in the forest that are spookier and scarier, but mostly it's just like a slog through grief and depression, and I don't care. So I didn't like it. My kind of top 3 from Stephen King are Misery, The Shining, and Carrie. The Shining and Carrie, like, that kind of goes without saying. Misery is kind of something a little bit quieter. I really love Misery, and I especially liked the novel within the novel. I actually enjoyed the novel at the time that I read it. I enjoyed how he was solving the creative problem of bringing a character back that he had killed off for, his captor. Please don't knock that over. If you're gonna go, I need you to go. Thank you. If you've ever read Misery, you'll know that he brings the character that he killed off back in a very cheap way, in a very hack way to begin with. And when his captor reads that version of the character coming back, she gives it back to him as just like trash. It's like she's calling him out for his own hack writing. And so he actually has to go in and really organically write how this character could come back from the dead, like how would that have happened. And so he has to actually do some, I'm saying, tricks with his writing. He has to really get into creative problem solving and bring her back in a real way. He can't do it just to please the reader. I just like that from an authorial standpoint, and then I also just very much enjoyed Misery. I liked the story, and I especially enjoyed Stephen King's descriptions of pain, and especially chronic pain in the beginning of the book. I found that very effective. Let's go ahead and read the blurb for Adam Neville's Last Days, and you can see the commonalities between the last 2 books that I purchased. When guerrilla documentary maker Kyle Freeman is asked to shoot a film on the notorious cult known as the Temple of the Last Days, it appears his prayers have been answered. The cult became a worldwide phenomenon in 1975 when there was a massacre, including the death of its infamous leader, Sister Catherine. Kyle's brief is to explore the paranormal myths surrounding an organization that became a testament to paranoia, murderous rage, and occult rituals. The shoot's locations take him to the cult's first temple in London, an abandoned farm in France, and a derelict copper mine in the Arizonan desert where the Temple of the Last Days met its bloody end. But when he interviews those involved in the case, those who haven't broken silence in decades, a series of uncanny events plague the shoots. Troubling out-of-body experiences, nocturnal visitations, the sudden demise of their interviewees, and the discovery of ghastly artifacts make Kyle question what exactly it is the cult has awoken, as well as its interest in him. There are a number of things that I am a sucker for in horror, and that is occult or secret society investigations, like cults gone wrong, occult rituals gone awry, and a character who's kind of not involved with the cult having to figure out or like somehow getting involved with all of this, and slowly it is revealed to us what this cult or lodge or whoever, like what they're doing, what they're about, like answering the question of, is this something that's actually paranormal? Like, is there like a cosmic monster? Is there an old god? Or is this more just like human beings being terrible? Or you can even get very vague about that when you never actually answer that question. It's up to the reader to decide. I love that stuff. And that's a lot of Lovecraft, right? A lot of Lovecraft is the main characters getting involved with like all of this stuff with the old ones and the cosmic ones and the outer ones, and them running afoul of things that they have no comprehension of. And so I'm a sucker for that. I am also a sucker for found footage, and this is billed as a found footage novel. I'm not sure. I mean, he's a documentary maker, so I'm assuming he's going to be filming the interviews and everything else. Another big thing that I'm a sucker for is haunted movie. Is the movie haunted? I'm interested. Is it a VHS tape that is in fact haunted? Like, all you have to say to me is like, piece of technology is haunted. The phone's haunted, the internet's haunted. I'm just like, yes, probably I'm gonna enjoy it even if the book sucks. If you include like some tropes like in a spooky way, you've got to keep it spooky with me, or at least there has to be an investigation or hardcore mystery aspect. You can't just have everything up front as in, this is the cult and this is the magic they do and this is this, a la Lee Bardugo. You have to give it to me a little bit Lovecraft. Okay, things have to unfold. It has to start fairly mundane for me and descend into the insanity, if that's where we're gonna go. I'm excited to read Last Days, and this will likely be the first novel that I read from Adam Neville before I try The Ritual and some of his other stuff that I'm probably gonna have to order from Amazon, because I believe he no longer does traditional publishing. I believe he has his own publishing company now, and he just releases his own work through his own stuff. And I was really enjoying, especially because like I don't particularly enjoy these covers, and I was looking at the books that he released on his own. The covers are not only so much nicer, the design is much, because these, like, I'm sorry girl, but these look bad. These look cheap, they don't look good, they are not intriguing at all. If I had no idea who Adam Neville was, I would not pick these up on site. I simply wouldn't. And he has, either he's done it himself or he hired someone to do it. The novels that he's been putting out on his own have a very distinct look. They are well designed, and they also, that particular signature style, it's like branded to his novels. When I see those covers, I know that that is Adam Neville or Adam G. Neville. I think he's going by Adam G. Neville now because he was Adam Neville for his traditionally published stuff, and so he probably had to change at least some of the name. But his own production value for his stuff is better under his own hand, and since he already had that audience, like, he can do that. He can afford to do it. So the last book I picked up is Episode 13 by Craig DeLuey. And so this is another one of my like favorite horror tropes. Not only found footage, but this is a paranormal investigation. And y'all know, if you've looked at any of the writing stuff that I do have a larger project that is pertaining to a group of teen girls who are paranormal investigators. So whenever I find a book that is dealing with paranormal investigation, and this is a more recent one, I'm fairly sure, let me look at this. This is 2023. I'm always sort of looking for how people are doing found footage in novels, how people are doing paranormal investigation in novels, to see if, like, what I enjoyed about it, what I didn't enjoy about it, if I can learn any lessons as a writer. Let's go ahead and read this blurb. Fade to Black is the newest hit ghost hunting reality TV show. Led by husband and wife team Matt and Claire Kirkland, it features a dedicated crew of ghost hunting experts. Episode 13 takes them to every ghost hunter's holy grail, the Paranormal Research Foundation. I thought they were gonna like name an actual location that we all kind of wanted to go to. I don't know. This crumbling, derelict mansion holds secrets and clues about bizarre experiments that took place there in the 1970s. It's also undoubtedly haunted, and Matt hopes to use scientific techniques and high-tech gear to prove it. But as the house begins to slowly reveal itself to the crew, proof of an afterlife might not be everything Matt dreamed of. Again, if I did not see other people, in the blinds, please don't break them. If I did not see other people talking about this cover would not have grabbed me. Like, seriously, the only cover here, and it's because horror is like not that girl, right? Lee Bardugo is that girl because of her success within young adult and in her transition to adult writing. I'm going to start with The Familiar, and I am hoping, you have no idea how badly I want to like this. I want to like her so much. And I'm hoping that character and plot and writing style end up hitting for me in this one, and that I can join the Lee Bardugo, at least adult fandom, and I will purchase more from her as, she releases. But I'm not going to start this just yet. I think for the rest of today, I am going to try to get through the most or more of Babel, and I will likely begin The Familiar maybe towards the end of the week, depending, or even on the weekend. And so that was my little tiny haul. Those are the plans for the reading. I know we haven't done that much writing yet, but if I do happen to do something later on today, I will share with you maybe how I feel about my own writing progress, what I'm currently working on, and maybe my favorite sentences or something like that. I am more than halfway through Babel, and something fairly dramatic just happened that I'm interested to see how that plays out through the rest of the narrative. However, I would say my feelings haven't strongly shifted one way or the other. The things that I adore about it, I still adore, and the things that I really have serious questions or I'm unclear about it, that remains the same as well. But I don't want to say anything definitively until I get to the absolute end of the book to see where she's going with this. I did also write some today, and so I typically have a number of writing projects going at any one time. So the biggest one right now that I mentioned and will continue to likely mention on these sorts of videos is the paranormal investigator horror novel, and that's the big one. What I realized in writing it was that I I needed to have these maybe 3 to 4 much shorter novels that are kind of leading up to that big novel, and it's not a series, but it's these short contained horror novels, so you could pick one up and read it and have a completely contained experience and never read any other of the novels. You don't have to read them all to understand anything, but there are certain things that repeat in each of the novels that if you read them all, it would be I have maybe a deeper understanding of what this reference to this thing meant in this particular novel or that particular novel. But each novel has its own set of characters and its own contained plot. So each novel you would get a complete story, and then if you happen to read all of them, there are references to things that are going on throughout the area, because all of the situations that are unfolding in all of the novels are related to a specific event. And the event that they're all related to is the event that occurs in the big paranormal investigation novel. One of the reasons why I wanted to write a bunch of shorter novels is because I like working on shorter projects when I hit like a milestone on a larger project, and the paranormal investigation novel, like, that requires so much. And so I wrote the short horror novel, the one that I said that I got the draft all out and done. Getting that novel draft out was sort of like a break from that big paranormal investigation novel, because I had just completed on that this big long historical portion that kind of never seemed to end. And I don't know how much of that is going to end up in the final draft. It seems important to me now, right? As time goes on, it might be information that I need to know, but that doesn't necessarily need to be in that exact form in the novel itself. And I know that there are more historical portions of that novel that I need to write, and it's just like, it's a lot. There's all of that. And then right now I am to give that shorter horror novel draft a rest before I start going through it again. I said I would work on get through another draft, or at least half of one. And that is the dark fantasy. And I don't know if it's young adult or new adult. Probably it's new adult, though. I don't even know if you can classify it as that based on what new adult actually is in practice, which is it tends to contain a lot of smut, which is fine, but I think that if I publish something as new adult, that would be false advertising. I don't even know that this book is even going to contain like a graphic scene. And the dark fantasy is me completely rewriting a novel that I queried like years ago. That's Fearsome, which there are a couple of chapters of that up here. I really wouldn't recommend listening to them, but you can. That novel has been like burned to the ground and rewritten so many times, and now I'm doing it again. This time it's to take it out from being a portal fantasy, and I'm actually liking all of the changes that I made to it, because the reason why I was so resistant into rewriting it again in that way was because I knew I couldn't keep any. I could kind of keep the main character, but she had to become essentially a different character. Her background is totally different now. What I was really writing about in Fearsome was the effect of intergenerational trauma on people and how abused people become abusers. In the original Fearsome, when it was a portal fantasy, this girl was going specifically to hell. A demon was taking her to hell, had tricked her into going to hell. But that story had a particular cyclical arc that the ending of the story was relevant only because of the beginning of the story. And so if I took it out of the portal setting, if I stopped it from being like someone's being taken from Earth into hell, I couldn't keep that structure. And so for a really long time, I was messing around with it, trying to see like, oh, well, can we just start her off in hell instead of taking her to hell? And I was like, the ending gets too weak without her starting off on Earth. The main character is a girl. I like the character that she's becoming, in that I think she's interesting. She's a really terrible person. Like, she has some good qualities, or I guess admirable qualities maybe, but she's a very terrible person who does mostly terrible things throughout the entire book. I would hope that I wrote her well enough that you would understand why she's doing what she's doing, and then have a specific reaction about the end of the book. So usually after I've changed something extensively, it's gonna require at least 2 other passes on it to make those subplots and changes a lot stronger. What I'm gonna attempt to do is actually query that one, the dark fantasy one, for traditional publishing. But what I would try and pitch it as is dark romantasy, because we have all of the dark romance books, and then we have romantasy, and so why not dark romantasy that's a hybrid between the toxicity of the relationships within dark romance with a darker fantasy world that's not dark enough to be grimdark, but I don't think I would have any problem pitching it as dark romantasy. If you are a light reader of fantasy, or if you are someone who reads a lot of fantasy, I would be looking to not completely disappoint the hardcore fantasy reader, but if they were kind of comparing it to something that was more world building and political machinations in Dune, it would be completely different, obviously. I want to get through at least half of that draft before I dive back into the horror novel, going over that for the first time, because I'm probably gonna have to add more words to it. I already know that I'm probably gonna have to add more backstory for the male. Like, he's not really a main character. There's only 2 characters really in that book. The main character, who is girl, she's 18, girl, woman, and then I think that's a girl, and then the side, he doesn't have as much page time as she does, but he's very relevant to the story, obviously. And I think I have him at like 22. Maybe he's a guy. And then on top of that, I have a project that I am working on when I want to kind of change up the tone. And also it's something that I'm hoping to get out a lot sooner, because I would actually like to start putting at least one project on Substack. And I already have the concept down, and I'm getting out the first, like, I kind of almost don't want to call them chapters, I want to call them episodes, because what I'll end up putting on Substack, I think it's probably going to be Substack, like, unless I research something and find out a platform that I prefer. I want to start putting an isekai, OELN, original English light novel, isekai style, onto Substack. It's about someone, and this was this is a fictionalized version of someone, an actual historical figure, and I'll say it is someone who was in the occult community. A fictionalized version of that person ends up getting reincarnated as someone's cat, for specific reasons that will unfold throughout this original English light novel. And so I already have the first volume of this English light novel would be 12 episodes. 12 episodes, 12, it's not counting to me as a chapter, and I'll explain why. 12 episodes, so it would have an arc, like a 12 episode anime. So each volume of the English light novel would be a 12 episode arc in which you would get a complete meta narrative. And then we would move on, kind of like, it's like seasons of a show, right? We would get like the next season. However, instead of each episode being like a chapter, because chapters kind of tend to end in cliffhangers, or it's not a complete story, each episode would be a complete story. You would get a complete story, a complete episode in every entry, and then all of the episodes together would complete the main meta narrative. That is the project that I got words out on today. So I will read something that had to come out. Oh, I can't say the name though. If I say the point of view character's name, it's immediately going to give it away. So I'm going to call the point of view character Ashmole. I'm going to read one paragraph. The point of view character is a cat, and you can hear my own cats scrabbling around back there. For this particular story, it's way more of a cozier, humorous story that will have some like action beats, and there is some mystery to it. But for this part of our tale, what we have here is our cat has just been adopted into their new home, and this home is occupied by 2 sisters, and these 2 sisters are working together to catify their space. So here is some of what I wrote today. At the bedroom door, Ashmole noted the result of Katya's activity. A square of white plastic patterned with fish skeletons and yarn balls covered a square hole in the wood. Stretching out a paw, he batted the contraption, and the plastic part swung back and forth. This small passage was meant for him, so if Anya closed off her chamber, he could still come and go as he pleased. He tried out the small door and found it worked well, and also found the sisters gathered at the end of the hall. On her feet, Anya held another door stable while Katya sawed away. The space beyond the entrance contained a toilet, sink, and bathtub with built-in shower head. A bathroom then, and they meant for him to enter this place at his whim as well. I'm getting close to halfway through the first episode. I'm approaching my first main action beat with that. And it's very much the action is very Sailor Moon. Anyway, it's amusing to me. So the story is meant to be more cozy in tone, and it's meant to be humorous, but it also has to have some historical detail in it, because this a lot of the characters are reincarnations of historical, magical, or spiritual figures. Anya and Katya aren't. That is what went on today, and tomorrow I'm a little bit concerned because we're supposed to be having some fairly nasty weather. And when we have nasty weather, it's pretty much a guarantee that I'm going to lose power. Hopefully that doesn't happen, but I'm not counting on it, is what I'm saying. And it's only just begun.
너무 많이 들어왔나 우리 다시 돌아갈까 너무 많이 돌아왔나
I am being exceptionally lazy about this update today because I flat out have not done anything when it comes to reading and writing. I don't know, I might get out a sentence later, maybe. Today has just been my 9 to 5, and as you can see, that's actually what I just showed you with the flooding outside is not normal for this area. We had a good half of day of consistent heavy rain, and people have been sending me their pictures and everything else. The city is you can't go anywhere right now. The city is flooded, and I would not be surprised if we had some stuff about people losing their vehicles. I don't even think it's hurricane season yet. It just has been largely an unproductive day for me. However, I was browsing on some stock photography websites looking for potentially some images for when I maybe get around to actually putting stuff together to publish it for stuff that I maybe feel I want to publish myself. And I found the perfect cover for the short horror story that I've been mentioning of mine. I'm gonna put it on here because I saw it and I was like, that is literally, there's a repeating motif that happens in that horror novel that is when you see it, it's exactly. It is exactly that picture, and it has the clown aspect because that's being incorporated into this particular horror novel as well. It was a rather unproductive day for my personal stuff that I wanted to get done. I did actually end up writing some yesterday. I wrote on the isekai project, and I always I downplay the amount of work that I actually get done because I actually, besides getting the stock photo, and I did write some more on the light novel, I also did some research into Substack. I did not understand to what extent Substack is its own self-contained platform. So it has video and audio capabilities as well. I don't know that I'm going to start off with any of that, but what I think I'm going to do, besides having the paywalled fiction there. I am also going to have 2 types of content. It's going to be free stuff, and the free stuff is going to be more like magic and manifestation stuff, like smaller articles that'll probably go up weekly, like every Wednesday. And then the paywalled fiction, that would be like a monthly post, so I don't get like too overwhelmed. But I'm gonna make sure I have like write a bunch, so we have like several months of I have several months of wiggle room with that. Today I am going to get my hair touched up, my hair done. I have like 25 or so minutes before I'm going into my appointment. I did bring Babel with me. We're still getting through good old Babel. Okay, so today I think is mostly going to be a reading day, though, like, of course, I'm probably going to try and get some writing done. I don't know if it's going to be on the same project or on a different one.
꿈에서게 꿈이 아니겠지 꿈이었어도 나 헤어나오지 못했어 I don't wanna wake up just wanna back up 우리가 함께했던 것을 난 너무 슬퍼 눈을 가렸어 아무것도 보지 못하게 넌 아마 내가 안에 미워둔 기억 속에서 나를 찾고 있겠지 더 많은 것이 변해 우릴 갈라섰다도 난 변하지 않았어 You know what have I done to you I wrote my life But before I sent it you were far away The song can never reach you 이 노래를 듣게 된다면 이미 늦었어 The song can never reach you 아무 일도 하던 그대로
I messed myself up just a little bit because I am getting up today to come and work at a coffee shop that I really like, and we're getting the rose matcha latte this time, not the pistachio latte. If you know what reading I talked about where I was complaining about the type of latte that I got. But usually, like, when I come over to this place, like, it's in my head, it's like, oh, it opens at 7, and so I wanted to get here because there's a specific spot, there's a little nook that I want, so I like to get here super early so I can have my little nook to write in and read in. And I pulled up and I was like, it is suspiciously dark in there. And when I went and looked at the sign, it opens at 8 a.m. So I must have been coming here like on weekdays, like when I was off or something, because typically it's 7 a.m. weekends 8 a.m. So I am going to finish out because I am pretty much done with Babel. Like, I'm getting through like the epilogue, so I'm gonna finish that up. In here, I have thoughts, but they're not quite as bad as I thought they were gonna be. There was a point with that book where like I was enraged and I was actually like disliking R.F. Kong as like a person for writing Babel. And like now that I'm at like the absolute end, I'm like, okay, she saved it some for me, but like I did not expect like the roller coaster that I went on with Babel, like as a book, and I'm still trying to figure out what I'm gonna say about it for like an official review.
넌 아마 내가 안에 미워둔 기억 속에서 나를 찾고 있겠지 더 많은 것이 변해 우릴 갈라섰다도 난 변하지 않았어 You know what have I done to you I wrote my life But before I sent it you were far away The song can never reach you 이 노래를 듣게 된다면 이미 늦었어 The song can never reach you 아무 일도 하던 그대로 우리 다시 돌아갈까 너무 많이 돌아왔나 우리 다시 돌아갈까 돌아갈까
I finally, for really real, finished Babel, and I'm glad I read it all the way to the end, because I moved from a space of absolute hatred to being like fine with it, but still like very disappointed, because like I thought for sure that that was gonna be like something I really loved, and I really didn't. Like, it's enough, I'm telling y'all, it is enough to where I'm just like, I don't know that I'm going to read anything by R.F. Kuang again. I happened to watch a review of Babel after I was done to see what other people were saying about it. I mostly agreed on like the more nuanced, critical takes that I read on it. Most of my gripes like are in line with people who in general enjoyed what the book was trying to do, but had really serious problems with it as a novel. I had such like bad feelings about Babel. I was like a little depressed. Like, I was just like, oh, I feel bad. I also was having like weird mixed feelings, because I was like, okay, now I'm gonna start the familiar. And I already knew, I was like, I haven't really enjoyed Lee Bardugo, so like I don't know what's gonna go down with this book. So far, I'm really loving it. Like, if she keeps up what she's doing, like this might be the Lee Bardugo book for me. Though here's the thing, I am a bit interested in how certain things that are going on in the book, like culturally and racially, are going to be received by, you know, the more culturally sensitive like portion of booktube, book talk, bookstagram, and all of that. Because like, I'll just talk about it right now, like, because I read the blurb in this video, and the one of the like, because this is like a dual perspective book, but like the kind of the main character is a Jewish woman, and she can do magic. And here's my perspective on this sort of stuff. It's not a problem for me that if you have like a black character or an indigenous character or a Jewish character, from my perspective, depending on how it's done and who is doing it, you can have those characters be magical without falling into the magical other person like stereotype and trope. And also, because this character is Jewish, I'm kind of like I'm not offended, because I don't feel that this is being written offensively, but I'm curious to know what like other people think about that. Jewish people do have their own magical tradition and mystical tradition, like that's a real thing, but it's become like that trope, the magical Jewish person, at least in America, well, it's more than America, just in the West, like got so entwined with anti-Semitism that like I'd be willing to guess that like not everybody's gonna be happy about that. But so far, like, I'm just like, it's not dissuading me, but then I'm not Jewish, right? I feel kind of the same way about that as I do about Catriona Ward writing from a DID perspective in The Last House on Needless Street. I'm not the authority on it, but I felt in reading the text that everything was done very like sensitively and in good faith. So it like, that's why it's sort of like, who is writing it? How well are they writing it, and what purpose is it serving narratively? So like, I don't necessarily have that knee-jerk reaction of like, if you are not like from this background, you can never write a specific thing, depending on what it is. As the writer, you take the risk, you do it as well and respectfully and whatever as you can, and then you just take the shots. You take the criticism, even if you have sensitivity readers and everything, like you're never going to, even if you do those sorts of characters well, even if it's not a huge problem, you're still gonna have people not agreeing with the fact that you did it. or feeling like you did not represent them very well. I think that's just a fact of writing. Today, I've gotten, like, all of the work that I was doing on my own writing at the coffee shop was with the light novel. I got through and finished my first major action beat, which is, this is like, we're pretty much at the dead center of this first episode or chapter of the light novel. We have a little ways to go, and then there's like the major action beat for this episode, and then the denouement. So I'm pretty pleased with how it's been coming along. It's a very like cozy, like lackadaisical vibe, and I'm always kind of wondering how much of that is like boring, because like the initial action beat is kind of like the point of view character is kind of watching it from a distance, and understanding certain things and realizing certain things, and then it's sort of like that like minor action beat is foreshadowing for the main action beat that happens later on towards the end of the episode. So that's like, I'm happy with how that's coming along. And then probably later today, I will work more on the dark fantasy. I worked a lot on the dark fantasy yesterday, and I am thus far very satisfied with all of these solutions I've been coming up with for how I've been like rewriting this draft of this particular fantasy for a while. And the piece of writing that I will share, the sentence that I like most stuck out to me, I'll share, is from the dark fantasy novel, which I do have a title for, but I don't feel like sharing it yet. I like it. It sounds very like YA, but I'm thinking about just making this like an adult title, and so I don't know that YA title is gonna work. And it's very much a blank of blank and blank. It's very much like that. I'm just like, come on, I'm giving YA fantasy with this title right now, and I actually kind of like it. It makes sense for the book, but who knows if it's gonna stick around. It's a working title. And so the line that I wrote or like transcribed yesterday, because this particular line has been in, I think, almost every draft of this novel, and the line is, "The holiest bodies were the ones that hurt." Just to give some context on that, originally the main character of the dark fantasy novel, when it had way more to do with like trauma and how trauma manifested in people like long term, the main character was anorexic. And that line was like attached to how she felt about her anorexia and about her anorexic body. And so that line in writing it, like it is when I'm saying it's an untrue line, it is a truthful, authentic statement from the point of view character, but it's an unwell statement. The holiest bodies were the ones that hurt. That's very unwell. But like the perspective of the character is unwell. The character is ill. In a lot of different ways. And while this new form of the character, because she's totally different, completely different character now, she's not anorexic, but I kept the line because she has gone from a traumatized teen girl dealing with an eating disorder. She is now, like, I'm pretty sure she's older. I might, but like right now I have her at 18, but I might bump all these people up into their 20s. The reason why I kept the line is because in this version, when I have taken it from a portal fantasy, so we're no longer going from Earth into Hell, it's just like its own fantasy world with like no mention of Earth. In this version of the story and in this world, the main character is she's already pretty like whacked out, because she's a religious zealot. She's like spent her whole life like believing that like her particular holy order is like our God, like directly God's servants, and that she in particular has like special favor from God as like a holy soldier, and she's been trained in that way as a soldier. Like she's like she's a murderer. Her particular like thought process, like the people who she is defending or believes she is defending is humanity. So humanity is the only like pure race, and everything else that's like a fantasy creature, that's like all like that needs to be cleansed or like destroyed ultimately. So she is like This unwellness, like across the board, it's intentionally that way because she's a religious zealot. Part of her zealotry, just like in the perspective, they're like the point where she's saying the holiest bodies are the ones that hurt. It's the same point in the novel where she has to, she's becoming a servant in the palace. These are demon royals. They're actually demons. In the version of the story where it was hell, obviously you have demons there. In this version of the story, there is like a heaven and hell, and like there are demons, but it's like slightly different from like your traditional demons and angels. You would still recognize them as a demon. There's a predicament that goes on that requires her to become a servant in a palace of essentially the most like she would be saying like degenerate or infernal or something like that. Like it's essentially like the worst place she could possibly be. And she, at least at the moment, doesn't have any power in this situation, or at least she can't reveal that she has power. And so she has to get a servant's dress made. And so when she's getting the dress made, she has to take off her clothes and she's looking at herself. When she takes off her clothes in this version of the story, instead of like she is looking at her anorexic body, like she's essentially doing body checking in the old version, like she's having like a panic attack. In this version of the story, when she takes off her clothes to get fitted, like you're seeing like all of these like scars. She like has all of these scars. And I would get like, she would not consider it self-harm. I consider it self-harm because all of it's unwell. But she is like, these would be scars from like her like self-flagellating and like cutting herself and like laying on beds of thorns and all that very, very like ascetic monk stuff that like went on in the Middle Ages. This to her is like evidence that she is like the most dedicated, right, to high God and everything else. And so in this version of the story, there is someone who is making the dress for her who she would consider like disgusting and unworthy and all of this stuff. And like, I hope it would be obvious from the text that like the person, the being who is dressing her is aware of like her role. Like they know that she is like the type of religious person that she is. And so when they see all of these scars on her, they're kind of like asking, they're like, oh, is that what your like high God demands of you? And she kind of like, and she can hear the pity in that person's voice or being's voice. And so she gets very like self-righteous about it. And her entire like monologue is about how she's like, you know, the best for like doing all of this stuff essentially. And this is like, ugh. And it's very, very, to me, it's very sad. Because like I'm writing it in such a way where like someone could tell that I obviously don't think what this person is thinking, and that like the world that she is responding to, I as the author, or like the authorial gaze or the narrative gaze, is quite different than the main character gaze. I would hope I would. I don't know if the writing is skilled enough to do that. But it's sort of like the whole novel, I like the twist now that like the plot is going to take for this character, because the narrative itself is almost a punishment for this character's like ethos and behavior. And there are several times in the narrative where like this person, she could change her mind and change her behavior radically, and she chooses not to. And so there's certain things that happen during the course of the novel that it probably is a little bit of like a sadistic joy at seeing someone with that mentality kind of like explicitly cut down to size by the end of it. Like explicitly being like, everything that you think is wrong. And like, not only is it wrong, it's like dead wrong in the worst way it could possibly be for you. Like, I love crap like that, but I don't know how much somebody else would enjoy reading it. The enjoyment of that book is in like spectacles of violence, and also within seeing like progressively worse things happening to a character who you might understand, but ultimately you probably would not at all care for in real life. So that's everything that's been going on. I have been enjoying all of my writer process. I hope to heck that I keep enjoying the familiar as much as I am enjoying it now, and hopefully my enjoyment of it is not too aggressively problematic depending on how all the stuff that I've already talked about is received publicly. If Lee Bardugo like maintains and like sticks the ending, like for me this is gonna be like the book. It's the book that makes me change my mind about her, and also something that I am like really like happy about with someone, an author like her, who has had such major success. Like there are so many examples of authors receiving like major success, and because of it they get lazy and they atrophy. They actually get worse as writers, or they very much stagnate. For me, like Lee Bardugo, even though like it might have taken, I'm so hoping this is the book that hits on all like notes for me. If it does, even if it doesn't, like she has progressively gotten better as a writer. Like even if none of her works are for you, if you look at the progression in her novels, she has steadily gotten better. And I think like this is like her third adult novel, I'm fairly certain. This is the first one that I've read that feels like a proper adult novel. I am getting ready to do the reading for the day in here because like why not like change it up a little bit. And this is gonna be my last entry for this vlog because tomorrow, I mean, I'm gonna write, I'm gonna read, but I need to get a lot of chores done, so I really just don't like want to be filming anything at all. I just want to like get like all the work done that needs to get done. So bye bye for now, my traumatized babies and mentally ill Barbies.